Hey, welcome to Clarksville Vibe, the show where we tell the stories of the people who make Clarksville, Tennessee the best place to live in America. Hey, I'm your host, Kevin Kennedy Jr. Thanks so much for finding our show. Our community is continuing to grow with this just real positive message of what makes Clarksville, Tennessee, a great place to live. So excited that you found us. If you would, just before we get started, take a moment, give us some feedback, leave us a positive comment, leave us a great review. Whatever you do to interact with us online on a social platform really helps us spread this message to let other people know how awesome Clarksville is, how amazing the people are here. And I've got a great guest that's just going to build that reputation even more today. A fantastic guest got planned for you, Mr. Paul Rhodes, also known as Mr. Amazing. He's a military veteran. He has decided to call Clarksville home. He is a realtor in our community. He is the owner of our local Tropical Smoothie franchise, doing lots of, as we know it, amazing things back to back to back. And so he's got a great story to tell. Really happy to have him on board. I think you're going to find a lot of value from what he brings to the table. So, hey, Paul, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Kevin.
Yeah, awesome. I feel like there are so many different directions where I could start this conversation, because when I'm thinking of who is Paul Rhodes, it's kind of like the endless comma, like realtor, comma, tropical smoothie, comma, military veteran, comma. You just got all these cool things that I feel like you're going to add a lot of value to the show. But what I want to start with is, as we were talking and as you were preparing for the episode, one of the things that you brought up consistently was you feel like you're a person of action. And that really describes that comma mentality, right? Of being a person of action who's not just going to talk about it, not just going to theorize over it, but someone who's going to take action and make things happen. When did you first kind of start to notice that attribute about yourself, and when did you embrace it?
I would say it actually started as a young child.
Okay.
My mother grew up in the South. And my grandparents were very faithful churchgoers, and they always talked about faith without works is dead.
Okay.
So as I started growing up, I started realizing that taking action was a very important part of things. Now, as a child, I took action in sometimes the misguided activities.
Sure.
However, it was the taking of action, whether it be to get that piece of cake I wasn't supposed to get,
Sure.
or just getting up early in the morning, making my bed. I want to say once I joined the military, that's where it really stuck at.
Okay.
As far as taking that great action, because then I could see the fruits of my labors pretty immediately. Versus a child growing up learning right from wrong, it wasn't as clear then, despite the fact that a lot of my mentors reinforced that great behavior.
Yeah.
But in the military, on my own as a young man, it really hit home.
Okay, that's awesome. So, you bring up your military career. So tell us a little bit about, when you enlisted, what were some of the things you were hoping to achieve or hoping to gain from the military experience, and where did you end up first? Where were you first stationed?
Okay, well, let's start with what you said about what were some of the things I hoped to gain or achieve. As a young man in the city of Cincinnati, where I grew up at, I was in this academy called the Cincinnati Academy of Math and Science. Found out very quickly that while I liked science, I didn't so much care for upper level math.
Okay.
But talking to my uncle, who was a Vietnam veteran, he explained to me the military was a great option to find out what I really wanted to do in life.
Gotcha.
He explained to me that if you weren't deployed in combat, you go home every night for the most part and get to grow. So in doing that, I joined the Army with the hopes of helping people out, and I became a military policeman.
Okay.
And becoming a military policeman, my first duty station was in Seoul, South Korea.
Wow. Were you single at the time?
I was single at the time.
Okay, gotcha.
And
how'd your family take that, up and off to South Korea?
So my mother, at the time, she was a single parent. Her and my dad, while they remained great friends, they were no longer together. Okay. It was kind of heartbreaking to her since I was her only child.
Right.
But in the same note, she was confident that I would do great things. It was kind of like, I want to get him out the nest. However, not halfway across the world. Country. But I chose Korea because as a teenager, I studied a martial arts style called Mudakwon Tang Sudo, which is a South Korean style. Okay. And in my mind, I would go to Korea and learn with the masters and everything else. And unfortunately, I got there. The first school I went to, I offended the instructor, and it was enough.
That's a great story, though, right?
There's another life lesson I learned, though. But I started off in Seoul, South Korea, as a military policeman. I met my wife in basic training. I went to basic training in Fort McClellan, Alabama. We met at church. At that time in my life, I was not looking for a wife. I wasn't even looking for a girlfriend. I was just looking to focus on starting my life, building a foundation to be ready to have a spouse. But we met in church after I said a prayer for my sick grandfather. remained googly-eyed for the next few months. Wow. Then about a year later, as we both were in Korea, about to head to our next duty station, I kind of figured that, I may not feel ready yet at the age of 19. I felt that was a blessing bestowed upon me.
Yeah. That's a great story, though. I mean, kind of halfway across the world, all of a sudden life just, really kind of speeds up on you fast. And, like you said, you may not be ready for it, but life just presents its challenges and opportunities and humbling experiences as well.
Very humbling.
As in the class that you mentioned. That's awesome. Well, Clarksville, this is obviously a Clarksville based show. We're telling stories of people who have called Clarksville home. And I feel like as a native to Clarksville, I'm 5th generation, grew up on the same horse farm here in town, but I feel like our community has so much added value by people like yourself, and there's probably tens of thousands of you over the course of our whole city that have chosen to call Clarksville home after a long service in the military. What was it about Clarksville that you felt like, hey, this is a place where I could see myself being around forever, or for a long time following my military service?
And that's a great question, Kevin. I can tell you, people ask me that all the time.
Yeah.
Especially those from my hometown. They don't call me Mr. Amazing as much as they call me Mr. Clarksville.
Okay.
Which is pretty, interesting.
That's awesome.
But I'll tell you, to be honest, after traveling around the world, United States, been in several duty stations, stateside and overseas, Clarksville is just a really unique place in the fact that it has its own identity. A lot of military communities, they rely upon the military base and don't stand apart on their own.
Okay.
Some other places, while they may have their own community, it's not a what I would consider a thriving, positive community.
Sure.
So as me and my wife moved here, and as I got opportunities to be more outside of the gates of Fort Campbell, Kentucky, I started meeting the people of Clarksville and just felt very comfortable in the sense that the community is already diverse, very accepting of outsiders, and at the same time it remains true to itself, to where I can meet people who are from Clarksville as well as who had retired here from other places, and it's all kind of the same story. A lot of people don't like my phrase on it, but I call it the land of milk and honey.
Okay.
And it really depends on where you've been. We're all limited to our experiences, but the few places I've been at, I've found this to be a great place to thrive, to meet people, to make new acquaintances, and just the opportunity that everyone has here if they take advantage of it.
Right. Yeah. I think that's awesome. So if you're making a commercial for Clarksville, I think Mr. Clarksville just spelled it all out right there. Yeah. It's opportunity, but that is a common theme as I'm asking people, even natives who have been around forever, their families have been around forever. What do you feel like makes Clarksville unique and special? It's always the people, which is why we want to tell these great stories, but it's also the opportunity. And, we had a guest, Bryce Robinson, who's a quarterback playing at Austin Peay. And he said, he's 21 years old and he felt like this was just such a dynamic place of opportunity for him. And that is a common theme that just gets brought up. But you also brought up your nickname, Mr. Amazing. I hinted at it at the, in the beginning, in the intro. Tell us a little bit where that come about. How'd you embrace it? And you do a great job of just, it is what it is. And it is catchy. It's people, when somebody says it, they know who you're talking about. If they happen to bring up your name, or if I bring up your name to somebody and like, I don't know who that is. I'm like, Mr. Amazing, Tropical Smoothie. Like, oh yeah, I know him. So how'd that come about?
Well, as I was leaving Fort Campbell the first time, I had the opportunity to become the Clarksville Recruiting Company commander for the U.S. Army. Okay. Recruiting young men and women to the service. Okay. And as I left that position, I had the opportunity to go to Missouri, to Fort Leonard Wood. And as I got there at about the age of 42, 44, okay, I when doing physical fitness with my juniors in age, around the ages of 18, 21, they kept saying, oh my God, sir, how are you still in the Army? Oh my God, you're in great shape. It's so amazing. Oh my God, you're amazing. So that name kind of carried with me while I was over there. Cool. And when I came back to Clarksville, at that time, I was also a fitness instructor at Title Boxing Club. Okay. Where I met several people at, and to be an instructor over there, we had to have a boxing name, so to speak. So then when I chose Mr. Amazing, it kind of stuck with it, and the people that met me there would go, oh my God, your workouts are so amazing. Yeah. So it just kind of stuck with me. And, awesome. In a world where you can almost be anything, why not be amazing?
Yeah. That's the tagline. We'll take it. That's pretty awesome. So tell me a little bit about your experience. You're starting to transition out of a long, really honorable military career. You're doing things like title boxing. You're planning for that next step. You mentioned kind of getting out into the community, trying to meet more people who maybe are not a part of the military community and are just normal people around town. What was that experience like for you? What kind of steps did you intentionally take in your head as you were preparing for that transition?
So that transition actually started about 12 to 13 years before I retired.
Okay.
I was enlisted for 16 years, and around 2005, I got the opportunity to get promoted.
Yeah.
I didn't get promoted like I wanted to, and it caused me to think about, what are my next steps? And at that time, I was going to retire in 5 years, so I started looking to franchising. Before joining the military, I'd always wanted to do some type of business. And at that time, I didn't know what the word entrepreneur was, quite honestly. The only words I knew were hustler, and I associated hustling with something negative.
Right.
But throughout my military experience, I learned that I did want to be an entrepreneur.
Okay.
I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I started studying franchises. So I studied franchises for 10 years.
Wow.
And upon coming close to retirement, I decided that after 22 years of being in a leadership position, I needed to get out of my comfort zone, start meeting more civilians than military members, and interacting and embracing with them in just a normal manner like I would in the military.
Yeah.
Because there are certain nuances in each organization, each community. And I just wanted to make sure that when I met people, they would meet me, Paul, versus meeting, my rank and my profession in the military.
Okay. That's cool. Yeah. It feels like when I hear something like that, it's an impressive insight that you would be able to value interactions with civilians because, as a civilian my entire life, I've been around military people, but I've never really been deeply indwelled into military culture. So when you tell me things of like, oh, you associate this person with their rank and their last name, to me, that's very foreign. So for you to have the insight to say, okay, if I'm going to potentially look at this opportunity of transitioning into civilian life, maybe becoming a franchise owner, I want to broaden my kind of knowledge base of how these interactions work. Not that you have to assimilate all the way because you're bringing added value from the military, but that seems like a really insightful decision on your behalf to try to incorporate yourself more and understand people more. So you bring up franchising. Obviously, you are a franchise owner here of our Tropical Smoothie Cafe. Brought a lot of value to there on your Madison Street location. But how did you choose? You studied it for 10 years. You said, how did you choose Tropical Smoothie over other opportunities that you probably looked into?
Well, I'll tell you, after that 10 years looking at different franchise opportunities, it became one of values. Tropical Smoothie Cafe, all the operations I looked at, they reflected our family values, me and my wife, of 31 years. Me and my wife for 31 years.
Don't shortchange yourself, 31.
Oh, yeah, it's just, it's a surprising number at times. But we found one that matched our values. That also was very interested in the franchisees having a profitable business versus just a place that had a name up there. A lot of the franchises we looked at, some of them were very top heavy, where the corporate would basically be like Geppetto pulling the strings of Pinocchio. Sure. Others were very much heavy on them making the profit regardless of the franchisee and their location. Some I looked at, they had like a one-size-fits-all approach. Yeah. And, in comparing Clarksville versus a Nashville, there's a very big difference in the way we can conduct ourselves. But when you have someone treating Clarksville like, Los Angeles or New York, just not a great fit.
Yeah, right.
And then to be quite honest, they're just like Clarksville, their leadership are so down to earth and so approachable that if I wanted to, I could call our CEO and have a conversation. Wow. and it'd be just a normal thing of like, hey, we already understand that we all want the best for this franchise. And in Clarksville, the leadership here, they generally want the best for Clarksville, regardless of people's difference of opinion how to get there.
Right. Yeah, that's powerful. So we try to add some value along the way. Let's say we've got a listener right now, 25, 30 years old, who thinks about, franchising as a possible opportunity for the future. Where do you even learn about it? What were some of the one or two things that you reached out to first to try to gain some knowledge of how does that business world work? How does the structure work? How do I get into it? What kind of capital do I have? How do they learn about how to even get started?
Well, everything's about due diligence. The first thing is just to be humble and ask people questions.
Yeah.
You come to find out that everyday people like myself are business owners. And as I started going online, we have this great resource called the internet.
Yeah.
And I looked up franchising. As I would go into various restaurants, they all have franchise opportunities.
Yeah.
So as I began looking into those franchise opportunities, I went to entrepreneur.com. Okay. And entrepreneur.com had a list of the the 500 most profitable franchises.
That's cool.
And as I started going down that list, I tried to find out what was a great fit for me. Originally, not knowing what I didn't know, I thought that franchises were only restaurants till I found out that there are other places like Batteries and More.
Sure.
Who would have thought they were a franchise? Yeah. Bug companies, 2 Men in a Truck.
Yeah.
Even a Chick-fil-A is a franchise.
Sure.
But it's a different model from say, Tropical Smoothie Cafe. Right. At one time, believe it or not, I wanted to franchise Waffle House.
Okay.
It used to be a great franchise.
Yeah.
I like the food. Me and my wife are foodies. However, they start buying back their franchises to reduce the franchise ownership to make it more of a corporate model because there is a lot of due diligence again on how to operate each franchise. The great thing is entrepreneur.com, they taught you the ins and outs of it. Then, of course, you kind of do more research on, what's a franchise disclosure document, which tells you what the requirements are to partner with any given franchise. Okay. Then I'll tell you what the money requirements. When I first started looking to own a Buffalo Wild Wings was $4 million. Liquid capital, that is, because there's a difference between liquid and gross. But little things like that to where I found a franchise that matched what our needs were at the time. And then I've coached several people since retiring. And one of the things that people don't really get is there is a bit of sacrifice. There's a bit of vision if you don't come from a family with money or make great investments when you're younger, where you do have to put that vision into motion. And then the most important thing I would say is to have great credit. Most people don't get the fact that if you have great credit, you have many, many opportunities versus just having a lot of money, stored away for a rainy day.
Yeah. That's pretty powerful because, obviously, in the process of how to get there, even just to get the doors open takes a lot of, fortitude, determination, just not giving up. But I'm curious, after you open the door, so you go from a, long military career, now you are a franchise owner of this small business, you're employing people, you're directly responsible for them in maybe a different way than the military service did, still leading people before, but now leading people in a new way. What's some of your biggest kind of learning opportunities that have come about from being a franchise owner that you maybe didn't expect to have with your long career in the military prior to that?
Well, I would say it's more of a confirmation. That confirmation is right, wrong is wrong. One of my favorite books we discussed earlier was the Book of Proverbs. Yeah. And we talk about speaking for those who can't speak for themselves. While in the military, I was a drill sergeant, had never wanted to be a drill sergeant. And that role is to really teach young men and women the basic military skills to survive on the battlefield. And through that experience of helping young men and women, I came to find that a lot of them didn't have guidance before joining the military, or they had limited support. Mm-hmm. And to see them wanting to become valid members of our country and community, that led to me looking to the franchise with young people. So coming to Tropical Smoothie Cafe, it was kind of that same goal. Let me go out there and be a voice to these young people who may not have a lot of role models, a lot of guidance out there of someone who actually cares for them and wants to see them succeed, not for my benefit, more so for their benefit, and then for our community's benefit. I strongly believe if our community thrives, we all thrive. Yeah. If our community thrives, our state thrives, our country thrives, our world thrives.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where you came about that slogan, "Live Better, Clarksville." Right. Yes. So, where is that something that you kind of came up with on your own? Somebody helped give you that idea? Where'd that come about?
Well, so the model of Tropical Smoothie Cafe, or their catchphrase at the time, was "Eat better, feel better." Okay. And then I had a friend who also motivated me to become a realtor. He said, "Oh, you should live better." And the timeline between Tropical Smoothie Cafe opening up, from what I expected to what it became, I ended up becoming a realtor. So it became, why not eat better, feel better, live better? And then I thought it's just something simple, something catchy, live better Clarksville. Yeah. So if you're in Clarksville, the idea is just live better. I mean, we all have choices to make. So just like Mr. Amazing, of all the things we could be in the world, why not be better or live better?
Yeah. Yeah. Why not be amazing? That's awesome. And, for the added value to our community that you're bringing by bringing young employees into your organization, mentoring them, giving them advice for their benefit and not for your own and not just for your local franchise. That brings to me this idea of servant-based leadership. And we talked about that a little bit before. What does that mean to you? And where did you see that first modeled? How do you go about trying to incorporate that in your day-to-day?
Well, first thing that modeled that was in studying the Bible.
Okay.
I believe that Jesus was a servant-based leader. I've had very deep discussions with those who believe different. However, I believe that his goal was to lead his disciples in the world in general to a better place as being the way, the truth, and the light. Mm-hmm. I look at those actions as roles to emulate. And then, if you get deeper into studying the Bible, you start finding out things of the brothers and sisters of Christ, living souls, and it becomes more applicable to your daily life. And in seeing that, it stuck with me as a child. Growing up in the military, you start seeing leaders who will go out there and lead from the front, who would take the same sacrifices, who would embrace the same hardships. I learned that in the military by seeing leaders out there in the front with us, in harm's way, not shying from that harm, getting their hands dirty with us, their feet dirty with us, their face dirty with us, and going through that hardship. So I brought that to the cafe to whereas even though I'm supposedly the owner, my motto, and it's been that way in the military as a leader also, you don't work for me, we work together. We just have different responsibilities.
Sure.
So I scrub toilets, I scrub drains, I take out the trash, I serve customers.
Yeah.
But it goes right back to the same thing of I'm not going to ask you to do something that I'm not willing to do myself.
Wow.
We also give back to our community through nonprofit organizations. So one of my biggest uphill battles, especially starting a business before COVID, was telling young people, hey, I'm going to pay you this. It's what I can't afford to pay you. It may not be as much as other places, but I'm going to do everything I can to make sure when you leave me, if you choose to leave, you leave better. And one of the ways of leaving better is to invest in your community. You don't have to have a lot of money to invest. Not have any money at all to invest your time, but it just goes back to give more. So it's just you serve in whatever capacity you have. Yeah. You don't have to be rich. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room. You just have to take action and give what you have of your time, talents, and energy.
Yeah, I love that. That's a beautiful principle. You don't have to have so much to be able to give. Taking that first step towards serving others first, besides waiting to receive and feel like you have enough. Because if my experience is one thing, you'll probably say this, if you waited until you felt like you had enough in order to start serving someone, you would never start.
That's very true.
Those goalposts move consistently. That's some of the language that I've kind of adopted for myself is you've got to really learn that contentment and that hunger to want to serve others without the caveat of, oh, when I just get this, when I get to this amount in the account, or when I get to this level of the job, because as soon as you get there, the goalposts move and the touchdown gets further away. And, now that amount that you were waiting for doesn't feel as safe and secure and happy as you thought it would. And so that moves and the number becomes bigger, or the promotion has to get higher. And so, your advice to others of being able to serve now where you are, I feel like is such a blessing. And the example of Jesus throughout the scriptures, being able to kind of be on the front lines of impacting people's lives in ways that were maybe not common of the time. But I think, he often gets brought up as a servant leader, as the servant leader of leaders for good reason. And, I'm encouraged to hear that was part of your story of you learning more about, becoming a leader both in the military and then out as well. So everybody knows you, transition the conversation a little bit, knows that you're a guy that you just said is generous with his time, talent, knowledge, energy. You're looking to give it away. One of the things that we discussed was this power of being able to write down your goals and then, have steps to achieve them. So tell me a little bit about that. What does goal writing look like for you? How often are you doing that? And, how obsessed are you with getting to the finish line on goals?
Well, to be honest, one of the things I learned, especially on the second half of my military career as an officer, was being comfortably uncomfortable.
Okay.
So what that means is I could stick to what I know and grow in that narrow vein of success, or I could look at things I'm not familiar with and choose to be successful in those. So I personally set goals every year. When I was a child, they were called resolutions, but to me, that's sort of childish thinking versus it's more of a wish versus taking action.
Okay.
More so than I'm going to write down a goal of what I plan on doing, not only for myself, but for my community. So you look at, I want to say 2021 probably was the best example when I decided that I would formally open up my coaching business to coach people in transitional coaching and business coaching. I wrote those goals down in December, the beginning of December, because, we don't like to wait.
Right.
And then before the second week of December, I had my first client.
Wow.
I wrote down a goal of doing more with real estate, despite my other challenges out there. And once again, like I said, it's easy to focus on one thing and to believe you're not going to be great at all things. But in reality, if you just lean forward, you'll find out that if you're gifted in certain areas. So
you need to say that again. If you lean forward, you'll realize if you're gifted in certain areas. And, I feel like sometimes, especially my generation and younger, we get stuck with consuming negative thoughts about ourselves, and we allow those self-doubts to prevent us from really operating in the gifting that we have because we don't believe it's a gift. So I hate to interrupt you, but that's powerful language right there. And I feel like a lot of people, if you come to this realization that God has given you specific gifts and everyone has different giftings, and we can't allow that self-doubt, everyone has those thoughts that creep in our head and want to tell us, hey, this is a goal that you have, but you're not good enough, you're not talented enough, you don't communicate well enough, you don't have the resources, you don't have this, that, you don't have the look, you don't have the branding, you don't have the backing, whatever it is. We tell ourselves these things, but believing in yourself, believing in your gift, if you're gifted, you can achieve it. That's powerful.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, you look at all the different historical texts about people who operate in their gifts, who, they couldn't write, they supposedly couldn't, they were not very smart, not very bright. In our American history, based on race, you didn't have certain opportunities, but still yet in every single era, there are people who were thought down upon, who did great things.
Yes.
And all you could do is look and say, wow, but all it took was him taking action.
Sure.
Which is, I'm so big on action, not words, of saying, you know what, regardless of what I lack, I'm going to move forward because I have a belief that this can be done.
Yeah, I love that. That's a powerful principle, which you bring up, just power of words. You when we're emailing back and forth, you brought up a phrase that I'd never really heard before. So I'm curious where this came from. But memento mori, time is running out, is what you put next to it. What does that mean? Where'd that come from? Why does that stick in your head?
It's a Latin phrase for remember death.
Okay.
Me and a good friend of mine, Adonia Bowen, we have similar philosophies in life, and remember death is. It just focuses on the fact that you do have a limited time on this earth. None of us, will live forever. And in remembering death, it puts a sense of urgency on you taking action in your life. Yeah. So as you say, we could wait on the perfect situation to have the most money, to have the most support, to have the best advisors, but still yet you'll pass away. So you have to remember death and take action now on whatever it is you want to accomplish. Because as you get older, you may require certain needs to where, as my mother would always say, once a man, twice a child. So, as you start off as a toddler, you're crawling, unable to speak, take care of yourself, you become an adult. There are several things you can do in that adulthood. But as you look at adulthood, for some, it starts off at 15 years old because they don't have a great role models or tragedy happens. Then right about to maybe 60-ish for most folks, that's it. So we're talking about maybe, a 45-year time span of doing great things where some people die at the age of 50, others live to 80. But if you're not in great health from 60, 65 on up, you might not have the same abilities that you had before, whether physical, mental capabilities. So you don't have it, but it's limited. So memento mori is in all things, remember death because it's waiting on you. It's coming. And there's no way to physically escape that from happening. So get out there, get after it, and take care of business.
Yeah. Be a person of action. Yeah. Write down those goals. I'm a goal guy myself. My wife, I think she gets annoyed that I am such a goal guy because, as soon as December rolls around, I'm like, all right, it's time to write these goals. But I feel like when you write them down and when you hold yourself accountable to it, it does allow you to achieve some success. I know last year I opened, like you said, you opened your coaching business. Right now I've opened a little secondary business doing some specialty procedures for infants. And that was a goal that I had, and I knew I wanted to do it for the year. And last year I accomplished that by June. So, I would say that to a younger person, the power of being able to identify what your goals are and writing them down, then holding yourself accountable by taking action on that. Well, I feel like whoever's listening to this probably is going to rewind this 10 times and listen to all these, great pieces of wisdom that you've brought along the way. So we finished the episode with what's called a lightning round. I didn't share this with you before. So lightning round is just real quick questions, right? They're not meant to be super deep. You can go there if you want, not, necessarily long stories, but it's just meant to be fun. Let the people get to know you a little bit more. But we've had a good time with these. So here's your lightning round questions. All right, right off the top. 20 years ago, I didn't know this would be so hard.
20 years ago, I did not know that seeing my children reach independence would be so hard.
That's tough. All right. Yeah. That's a strong word of wisdom right there. All right. 20 years ago, I didn't know this would be so fun.
20 years ago, I didn't realize the blessing of having the wife that I had would be so much fun. When you're on that roller coaster of love, there's a lot of ups and downs. But really at retirement, we've been on a major upswing that hasn't came down yet. Man, a blessed wife is a gift for sure. Absolutely. All right. If you could, I don't know if you're even allowed to answer this question, so you can tell me no. If not, if you could open another franchise today, you could just pick it right off the top of your head. What interests you? I would say industry-wise, I like physical fitness.
Okay.
I like self-help. So we are opening another Tropical Smoothie shortly. We're just looking for another location.
That's big news.
In Clarksville.
So if you got some rental space, you know who to contact,
That's
right?
With the drive-through.
You need a drive-through. Okay, fair enough.
But I'm always open to the opportunity. Once again, it's just even with franchising, it's more so to empower others. Yeah. So I think if I would go outside this brand, it would be to empower family or friends who just need to know that, hey, you can do this. It is possible. So I guess my next step would be more of a financier versus an actual owner-operator. Yeah, that's awesome. All right, one person in the community who is not your wife, who you feel like you can call, sit down with, share your ideas, have them evaluate where you are in life, where you want to go, what are your goals, and they have the ability to speak into your life and give you direction on how to get there. There are quite a few, but I'll narrow it down to maybe two. Okay. The first one being Donnie Bowen. Yeah. I mentioned earlier that me and him had a very similar lifestyle up to about 2016. Though we were both at Title Boxing Club, we hadn't really met, talked formally. Come to find out, we joined the military around the same time, got married around the same time, had children around the same time, and we had very similar philosophies on life. In the year, I want to say 2020, we would do Meeting of the Minds. Okay. That was kind of like a power meeting group similar to Edison, Firestone, and all those guys. But we get together and have these massive mind melts. Very, very, almost monthly. Yeah. The other one would be Dr. Rashida Leverett. She's one of our councilwomen. Once again, just kind of met her, and that's one of those things you talk about, soul ties, where I felt really that spiritually we just had a great connection, wanting to see the community do great, taking action to do so, and then using your gifts to help others. I believe that I can go to both of those and get no filter answers on things I'm looking forward to doing within the community, within my family, within the world. I think that they give me some very, very no filter answers. That's cool. But there are several more, but those are two that are really at the top of my mind. No, I love it. It just goes to show our community is really packed with people who love people, who want to serve others, make our community better along the way. And that's why I like asking that question, because there are people in this town right now with an abundance of overflowing wisdom and experience to really add value to you, to your life, to anyone's life at any time. And it's not just those two individuals. Like we said, it's really an abundance of people. I'll add a caveat too, which this is something that makes Clarksville so special. I can tell you for the most part, I've had the ability to reach out to either mayor, talk to them. I've reached out to our first responders, leadership, sheriff, the chief of police, chief of the fire department, chief of EMS, chief of certain departments within our city, trustees, councilmen and women. And I mean, when I say reach out to them, it's like, hey, let's go have lunch and talk about this. And without hesitation, most of them are just like this. Let's do it. Others, we'll have to work within the schedule. But it's very nice to meet your elected officials, even at the state level, and your community. And it's like you're on a first name basis. You sit down, break bread, talk about great things going on in the world versus so much negativity, because it is easy to get mired in negativity.
Right. Well, I love it. I feel like you have just brought the heat today for sure. So it's great to have you on the show. Great to hear your story. Great to have you in our community with your broad, experience, just the added value that you're giving to us all the time. So appreciate it so much. Hey, if you want to at this time, make sure that you interact with us on some way on our social media channels, whatever platform it is. We'd love for you to leave a review, leave some comments, tell him what are some of the great nuggets that he left for us today. We would really appreciate that. We'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks so much.
Thank you.